how has international relations played an important role in making our culture? We don't live in an isolated framework. We live with neighbors. There are people around us, different cultures around us. And I wanted to ponder as how has our international relationship impacted our culture, our art, our heritage?
Hello everyone, I am Manas Srivastav and you are watching UPSC Essentials of the Indian Express and our show that is Art and Culture with Devdutt Pattanaik. We've actually covered a few very important topics in the past. Today is one such important topic which is a part of our series. Yes, we're going to see and we're going to talk and Devdutt is going to explain that how does culture get shaped by foreign connections. And as you are aware by the format of our show, is that we actually take up the question from aspirants, from students, some points to ponder in their mind or something which they have come across while reading and studying. And they want our expert, Devdutt Pattanaik, to answer. So let's have a look at this question by Arunika Mathur from Bhopal. So Arunika wants to ask that over the years, our relations with different cultures have been shaped, our food has been impacted, and what syncretic dishes have come out of this cultural contact and exchange. So, what a wonderful question, and I think it's a very UPSC relevant question where they don't ask directly, but they pick up some kind of example to test your knowledge. And here, what Arunika wants to ask us is about foreign connections, the how culture is shaped around it, what we gain from outside, and what we have given to the world. But she specifically wants to ask in terms of food. But Devdutt is going to make it simpler for us, diverse for us, and contextualize in terms of what UPSC wants from students as answers. So we're going to break them down into simpler questions. First, let's welcome Devdutt. Hi, Devdutt, and thank you for doing this for our UPSC aspirants.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So Devdutt, let's begin. If you're ready for the first breakup of this question, the larger question, which was on different cultures and where Arunika talked about food, wanted to ask you about food. But let's start with a very simple question, and which may be simple, but it's diverse in the range, that how should we trace the long history of India's connection with the world?
So, again, like in all my conversations on culture and civilization, history and geography both are important. That is time and space. So when you're answering a question related to trade, you have to ask which period are we talking about? And second, which part of India are we talking about? So let's understand history first, because currently we are in the 20th century. 200 years ago, we had a British colonizer controlling us. Now, in the early part of the British Empire, they used India for finished goods. They would take finished goods from India to Europe. But in the latter part of the British Empire, they would take raw materials from India. And that is how Indian economy collapsed. So you have got a trade contact in the British period. First part is with finished goods, which is handcrafted materials from India, woven cloth from India. And the latter part, didn't give cloth, we gave cotton. And cotton would go to the other countries. So that is before that we had the Mughal Empire. Now that was before the Industrial Revolution. India was the land of crafts and lots of things. There was cotton going out of India, silks going out of India, spices going out of India, handicrafts going out of India. So that's the British period. Now, I'm sorry, the Mughal period. Then you go before that, you have the Sultanate period. Before that, you have the Chola period. And the Chola period, you have heard of this famous right now Ponnir Selvan film, which is talking about our trade relations with Southeast Asia. Before that, when you go, you come to another period. You come towards the Satavahan periods when you have cotton trade with Rome and the Roman Empire. That is, now you have got a cotton trade with the Roman Empire, which is about 2000 years ago. So when you talk about the Gupta period, pre-Gupta period, even the Mauryan period, you have now talked about the Roman Empire. Now, before that, what is happening now? Again, we go in history. Before that periods, before the Satavahan period. Now, remember, Satavahan period is between the Maurya and the Gupta period. So, look, I'm traveling back in time. Now, before that, I will come to the Mauryan period, and we have Alexander coming. Alexander is a Greek. So now you have connections with Greece. You have connections with Persia. So now, look how I've traveled through time. Now, if I travel through space, geography, I will say I have to talk of trading links from the coast, eastern coast, western coast, eastern coast, Southeast Asia, western coast, we are going to Arabia, Persia, and from Arabia to Persia, we are going to Mediterranean region, which is the Roman Empire. Then we go to the north, you have got the Khyber Pass and the pass, which is beyond the Thar Desert through the land routes. Where does this go to the land routes? It goes to Central Asia. So Samarkand, Uzbekistan, those words will emerge. These are words which we connect with Delhi Sultanate, with even the Kushan Empire, the Bamia sculptures, all those things will come over there. Central China will come over there. And then you come to the Himalayan kingdoms. That is, you have Bhutan, Sikkim, Assam, and from there you go to China and connections with China. So you have to understand the geography of India. You have to understand the history of India and then map this in a 2x2. I always say make a table. On one side you have history, on the other side you have geography, and you will understand India's trading patterns over time.
Absolutely. And that reminds me also of our previous episodes. So aspirants, students, viewers can go back to our previous episodes where Devdutt has talked about how history and geography is very relevant when you study about art and culture. And that's so everything is so connected in that manner. And so when we are talking about the history, I'm sure there's a very prominent question which comes in minds of people that ठीक है ये exchanges हो रहे हैं, हम ट्रैवल कर रहे हैं, कल्चर का आदान प्रदान हो रहा है, बट कैसे? सो व्हाट आर द मीडियम्स of the cultural exchange? And that is our second question.
So again, reminding people that the definition of culture means you are able to generate resources for yourself. Animals don't generate resources for themselves, right? They go looking for food, hunting for food. When do you say culture has been created? When we are able to gather resources, generate resources, when we, as hunters, as foragers, then gradually as herdsmen, as farmers, that is culture. But once you start exchanging and trading, because you don't produce everything, right? You need to exchange and exchange with people, civilization is born. So civilization starts when people start to exchange and trade, and humans have been trading and exchanging things from the Stone Age, right? So we have to remember that why are they exchanging? They exchange things because I don't have something, but you have something. So that is how my exchange will start. For example, I'm a farmer. I grow grain, but I want to eat fish. I want to eat meat. You are a fisherman. You have fish. You get fish. I will give you grain. We always talk of river valley civilization. The river valley, there are civilizations where they're growing crops, they're growing wheat, they're growing millet, they're growing barley. But what is not there in river valleys? There is no metal. Where is metal? Metal is found in faraway mountains, far top, where it is dry, where farming is difficult. So people who have metals don't have grain. Those who have grain don't have metal. They will meet and they will exchange goods. There are people who live in dense wooded forests, big trees over there. Like, for example, today, if you go to Uttarakhand, these regions have trees and big, big trees. Or you go to central India, where there is the Dandakaranya, the Central Asian forests, Central Indian forests. You can't farm there very easily. It's a lot of big trees, but you have trees. And so people want wood. So you can give wood, and in exchange, you will get some food. So that is how the reason we trade is, again, we will trade for, I remember it in this way, roti, kapda, makan. What do you trade? Roti ke liye, so wheat, grain, spices will come. Fruits, vegetables, that is what you can trade. Roti, kapda. India was the land of cotton. That was a special thing that India gave the world, cotton. From Harappa times, we have been trading in cotton. So there would be clothes that you, makan, of course, you can't give makan, but you can give wood. You can say, we could export wood because there are places in the world where wood is not available. We can give metal. Metal can be exchanged. For example, in Harappa, they needed tar or bitumen. Bitumen is not found in India. It is found in Iran. So they would take Iran, say bitumen would come to India. What was India famous for? India was famous for cotton. We would give them cotton and we would get it. We also can exchange skills. You have got certain skills. We could make great jewelry. We could do weaving. So we would give jewelry. We could give cloth. So these are things that you exchange. Now, while you are exchanging goods and services, you could also exchange animals and birds. Exotic animals go to other parts of the world. You can give birds. People want parrots, they want peacocks, they want monkeys, they want dogs. These would also travel across. So there are material goods are going. Along with that, ideas are also being transmitted. You don't just transmit. So you can transmit food, clothing, shelter, roti, kapda, makan, as I said. India had elephants. We would export elephants, but we wanted to import horses. So horse would come, elephant would go. So that was a very famous exchange that India would do. But we also would exchange ideas. So Buddhism traveled out of India. Hinduism traveled out of India to Southeast Asia, to Central Asia. Remember, the geography should come in your mind. So, but then your mediums of exchange. For example, if you look at the Harappa statue, the famous dancing girl statue, and look at her neck, she has cowrie shells around her neck. What was cowrie shells? You have heard of this phrase, mere paas do phuti kaudi nahi hai. Matlab, this do phuti kaudi really is a broken cowrie shell, and 4 broken cowrie shells would make 1 cowrie shell. So it was really like paisa and rupee. And cowries were used. Now, what is special about cowries? Cowries are not found everywhere. They're found only in like Maldives Islands, they're found. So they're found in the certain islands. They're not easily available. You can't just get anywhere in the world cowries. So cowries were used as currency to exchange. So that is how you found. So we don't just have goods and services and ideas. You also have currency in the form of cowrie shells. That is how you logically break down the question to get an answer. Otherwise, you can't remember so much. You don't memorize everything. You ask very basic things. मेरे को रोटी कपड़ा मकान चाहिए. मेरे को so once you get this in place, then everything else will automatically follow.
Exactly. And I was just wondering how interesting this is, the way to understand a topic connected to what is real life, what we speak in our daily language. And then things become so simpler. And I think that's how culture, civilization, and everything took shape and they were understood. So I think the key takeaway here is when you talk about roti, kapra, and makan, I think a brownie point will be when students will or aspirants will mention about the ideas. These are some things which are exchanged, and these are so important that it shapes history in a way. So thank you for that. And now let's come to another important question, and which is India specific. Of course, we are taking the frame of India in all questions, but when we come to specifically in India, that what has India taken from the world and what has it given to the world, given back to the world? So I know the list can be long, but certain things which you think that aspirants should know.
So what I would do is I would make a table. I would say what have we imported and what have we exported, right? Import, export. And then I would also create another. So that is one column is import, one is export. And then I would do in the rows, I would put food, clothing, shelter, transport, metal, like that. So that gives me a framework to give an answer, right? Very clean. Also, the examiner looks at it and says, hey, this person is thinking logically.
Yeah.
So even if you don't know the entire answer, you'll score points because it shows that there's a logical approach to the answer. It's not like a random rattling out of facts, but there is a process that you're following. Now let us look from one by one. Let's look at and all answers. It may not be, have we exchanged in the realm of food? What have we given and what have we received? So for example, in the Harappan period, I don't know if you know, in Harappan times, they used to sail by little boats. Little boats would travel along, and that time they didn't have sails. They didn't know to go deep into the sea. They would go along the shore. So they would use these boats, reed boats, and travel along the shore. And if they get lost from the shore, you know how they would find the shore? They would let loose of birds. They would have birds on the ship, and the bird would fly and can see the land. It would go in the direction of the land, and that is how they would know that land is on that side, and they would move along that. And you have these Harappan boats, so which we know that from Harappan times, that is 4,500 years ago. That is 4,500 is 2,500 BCE. This is the time when pyramids were being built in Egypt. There were ziggurats in lower. And you should look at the map carefully. From Gujarat coast, you go to the Pakistan coast, Makran, and then you come towards Iran, the southern Iran and the Arabian part. Now, this is where the first major trade exchange is taking place. India, in terms of food, what did we give the world? We gave what is called til. Til. Have you heard of til? What is til? Sesame. Kala til, til, til. So til se tel nikla. So til and tail were the Indian contribution to the world. We gave tail and we sold sesame, and that went out of India and went to the foreign land. So there is this exchange. India is the source of sesame, tail. So food mein aa gaya kuch. Clothings mein, we give cotton to the world. India's greatest gift is cotton. In food, another thing that you should never forget in India is besides oil, we also give Ikshu. Ikshavaku. Have you heard the name Ikshavaku? Ram is from Ikshavaku. Mahavir is from Ikshavaku. Buddha is from Ikshavaku. What is so special about Ikshavaku? The word Ikshavaku comes from Iksha, Yakshu. That is, it is sugarcane. India gave sugar to the world. Now, transporting sugar is very difficult because it will get spoilt very easily. So we crystallized sugar. So, and they were probably Buddhist monks who did this. And therefore, what was transported to Egypt, it was transported to Egypt, and that was called Misri. Misra is the old name for Egypt, Misri. And it was also sold to China, Chini. So Chini, Misri are crystallized sugars which allows for transport. So we made good, but good can't be transmitted. It is very difficult to, and this was happened only 1,000 years ago. Before that, it was not easily available around the world. So khane mein we have got, I told you sesame, I told you about sugarcane. On kapde mein I gave you cotton, jute. Jute was something which India has given the world. Now we come to Makan, Devdutt. What have we given Makan? We were famous. Kapde mein, by the way, jewelry is important. India would give a lot of jewelry to the world. Harappa was a major center of jewelry. What did we get from them? Let's ask, what did we get? Did India get things? So in one of the things that came into India from the western side is wheat, and from the eastern side, that is from Southeast Asia, we got rice. There were some forms of wheat and rice in India, but our techniques became better because we got rice from Southeast Asia and we got wheat from Mesopotamia. So these two things came from outside. During the British time, during the Portuguese time, from America, it's called the Columbian Exchange. India got potato, India got tomato, India got peanuts, India got chilies. So we got lots of things, different kinds of food. You eat cabbage, we eat cauliflower that we eat, potato that we eat, chilies that we eat, all came from outside. What did we give the world again in food? We gave spices. India was the home of spice. We gave pepper. Among spices, the biggest thing that we gave the world was pepper. Pepper has been found in mummies of ancient Egypt 4,500 years ago. So you have now the exchange. We have found objects from India, artifacts. For when I talked about Makan, what kind of objects were taken from India? Lots of statues, like Buddha statue has been found recently in Egypt. Then in Pompeii, which is in Italy, they have found what is called the Pompeii Lakshmi. You can find its image on the net. That is found there. So we used to give these objects would travel from India. So we have got this whole bunch of, in terms of ideas, what have we exchanged? If you go to Cambodia, Vietnam, Java, Sumatra, Malaysia, you will find Indian ideas have traveled from Buddha's image. You have the image of Hari, Hara, Vishnu, Shiva. You have these idea of kingship, Chakravarti Raja as an idea, Raja Mandala as an idea, Manu Smriti as an idea, traveled out of India. What came into India? During the Delhi Sultanate, we got kagaz, paper, qalam, pen. They came to India. What did the British bring to India? They brought printing technology to India. We brought so you have got industrialization came to India. Railways came to India. So where has been an exchange? We have given things, we have received things. But see, once you classify things, it becomes easier. Roti, kapda, makan, import, export. That is the way I will remember.
Yeah, very logical way of doing it. And I think it's not only in way to revise and learn, but also in the way of presentation. And as students would agree that presentation in your answer sheet is of very important value. It doesn't matter how much you know and how much you learn. So for example, when Devdutt, you are answering our questions, you keeping in mind that students don't need to write everything. That if you write few things in a good manner to sustain your point, to express what you want to say, then that's enough, and that's enough for your word limit and your expressions in the answers. um, Also, since you mentioned about Egypt and Buddha, just a question for the students, aspirants, and viewers. This Buddha and statue and Egypt was in news. So if you want to really comment, you can comment and let's see if you know it. And this is how UPSC have been forming questions. They might not ask you directly, but between the lines, they can connect what is going on in the current and what is there in the static. And this is how you can find chat show with Devdutt Pattanaik so useful. And it's a good thing that Devdutt brings such example which are also current related, so that you can update yourself with what's going around the world. Now, let's move on to the next question. So it is so interesting and very fascinating to think about this transportation, the logistics. It's tough to imagine today when the transportation, logistic, everything has become so advanced, and to think in the past. With the limited resources, the geography, and how these things were happening, but these things were moving, and that is important to understand. So, from these smaller questions, which look very small but have deep meanings and deep connection from the past, let's move on to an advanced question. When I talk about advanced question, I'm talking about how we connect past to present. So that is the question which I want to put in front of you, Devdutt, and let's see how you, in your own style, try to answer that. So what we have understood is that India's connection with outside world, and through your explanation, we've got to know that it's not new, of course, but how today we see this as continuity from past.
See, in today, we take so many things for granted. Like what is continuity? For example, if you're eating a samosa, right? We think it is an Indian dish, right? Samosa and jalebi. But neither samosa nor jalebi existed in India 1,000 years ago. About 500-700 years ago, both these dishes were brought by cooks who came with the Delhi Sultans, who came from Central Asia. They came from Uzbekistan, they came from Samarkand, and they brought these things to India. And of course, Indians, inside that we put potato. Now, where did potato come from? They came from America via the Portuguese. So the samosa came with the Turkish people. The aloo came from Colombia via the Portuguese, but we consider it, there is a continuation of this tradition. In India, we are eating samosa. We talk about practices, Islam came to India, at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, not like later. We always talk about 1,000 years ago. We have about Mahmud of Ghazni coming to India, but before that, we were trading with Arab countries. So even 1,400 years ago, one of the oldest mosques are found. One is the Cheraman Mosque in Kerala by traders. And then in Gujarat, there is the Bardwara Mosque, I think near Goga, near the Gulf of Kambat, which was a major trading zone. And we have in fact, we have a mosque where the Qibla faces not Mecca, but it faces Jerusalem, which is early in the life of the Prophet. If you're interested in knowing those details, that there we have actually a mosque in India which faces Jerusalem and not Mecca, which indicates it is early in the life of the Prophet Muhammad. This was built in India, and that. After that, you have other kings coming to India. They're bringing new technologies from Byzantium. They're bringing new technologies from Persia. And when you go to Delhi, you see the Lodi Gardens. You see these structures in Delhi. When you go to Bengal, Bihar, you'll see Shershah Suri's has built mausoleums. Where did these structures come from? They came with new ideas that came to India with people, with traders, with common people who traveled across the country. In the same way, there's a continuity. Even today, we trade with Europe, we trade with America, we trade with China, we trade with Southeast Asia. Even today, we are talking about, trade deficit and, how China dominates because it controls the trade. And at one time, India was to be this big GDP. Why did we have a great GDP? We always talk about this great GDP 500 years ago in the Mughal times, because we were trading. trading. We were trading with this world, and this continuity remains. Even today, we are connected with the world. We still share food. Today, we love Korean dramas, K-pops. We love Korean food. Import and export is happening. Korea, if you go to Korea, they will say we have had ancient traditions with India. The princess of India had traveled to Korea to marry a Korean prince. There are stories in Cambodia. There are stories in the Kaundinya Rishi had traveled and married a local Naga princess in Southeast Asia. So yeah, Ramayana is taught in Southeast Asia even today. Garuda Airlines exist in Indonesia. Indonesia is a Muslim country, but the airlines is called Garuda Airlines. Indicates that these ideas have traveled from India. And even today, we have got good trade and relations with these countries. Sri Lanka, we have had a long connection. So trade is going on for as long as humans have been civilized. We have records for over 4.5, 5,000 years of India trading with the West, with the East, with the coastal route, by the land route from across the Himalayas, across the seas. So there is a continuation. So as I said, think of time, think of space, think of materials, roti, kapda, makan, and then think of ideas, and your answer of anything related with trade will be sorted out.
Excellent. And I think from samosas, jalebi to airlines and trade, I'm sure students are going to love this and keep this in mind. And I'm just wondering how beautiful answers can become when people can relate these things to daily lives and connect their present to the past. And maybe they can have a better future also by talking about culture and maintaining it. Uh, Now it's time for Devdutt's point to ponder. But before Devdutt's point to ponder come, these are thought-provoking questions which not only link you or which not only Devdutt gives a hint of what we are going to talk in the next episode, but you should also think, take out time and think about these questions. After all, the India or the country expects thinking administrators. So, Devdutt, what is your point to ponder?
In order to understand culture, you have to understand people. In order to understand India, you have to understand Indians. What happens normally in all these cultural studies, we think of objects, so much of objects and architecture and art, we forget about people. It's all about people. So to understand a culture, we need to understand people. And that's a point I would like everybody to think about.
Absolutely, and I think we've talked about material culture while explaining, the various terms in the past episodes. It's time now to concentrate on people. And when I don't know how Devdutt is going to take us, but it gives an idea about migration, people coming, people and ideas, so much so. And so students should start thinking about it. And I'm sure Devdutt is going to take up a very interesting episode in his next session with us. So that's all for now, and I hope you've been enjoying our show. I would also request all of you, whoever is interested, to post questions on art and culture, and in our later episodes, whenever the time of that topic come, I'm sure Devdutt is going to take up your question. So don't hesitate to ask, and that is what Devdutt is here for us. He's making our lives easier. He's making our lives of the aspirants easier. So why not ask questions to him when he is giving you opportunities? So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that's all from today. Don't forget to subscribe the Indian Express video channel, the YouTube channel, and keep reading and watching UPSC Essentials, especially the show with Devdutt Pattanaik. Thank you so much.